Hi everybody and welcome to today's Chinese pod lesson. My name is Joe.
大家好，我是庆林，欢迎来到中文播客，很高兴又与大家见面了。
Today's topic will be a little bit on the formal side. So what are we talking about?
今天我们要讨论工作和职业。
So we will discuss work and occupation. And you will have to watch out for some words that you will find in the dialogue. So we have work as the first one.
工作
And we have to do business.
做生意
And writer.
作家
So let's check how this all goes together.
您是做什么的？
我是做生意的，你呢？
我的工作是写书，我是作家。您是做什么的？
我是做生意的，你呢？
我的工作是写书，我是作家。您是做什么的？
我是做生意的，你呢？
我的工作是写书，我是作家。
So now that you've heard the dialogue, let's break it down line by line.
您是做什么的？
What do you do for a living?
您是做什么的？
What do you do for a living?
您是做什么的？我是做生意的，您呢？
I'm doing business. And you?
我是做生意的，您呢？
I'm doing business. And you?
我是做生意的，您呢？我的工作是写书，我是作家。
My work is writing. I'm a writer.
我的工作是写书，我是作家。
My work is writing. I'm a writer.
我的工作是写书，我是作家。
So here the two people speak about what they are doing for a living. And did you hear what the first person does? What was it?
对，做生意。
To do business. So business is
生意
which is itself kind of a cute word because if you look at it like the two letters inside, it's 生,
生
which means to produce, sometimes even to give birth. And then the other word is meaning.
意
So like to create meaning. And you could see it, this definition, like to create meaning as a part of trade, right? Because if you trade, buy and sell, you create meaning between two different parties or people. So, and 做 is to do something. And together it becomes
做生意。
like to engage in the art of creating meaning between people by selling things. Okay, something like this. Did you hear what the second person does for a living?
对，是写书。写
To write
书，
and a book.
写书。
So this is to write or writing something, and normally like specifically books. And then after that he mentioned his profession as such. So he's a writer, of course, if he writes books. But how do we say writer?
作家。
So the first word 做 is to compose something or to make up something. And 家 can have two meanings. Normally it's the home, but it can be an expert as well. So here it's an expert of making something, of composing something. So a writer writes books, he composes books. So interestingly, they used three different ways of talking about their job here. So the first one was just saying in English, I'm doing business.
我是做生意的。
So pay attention to this 是 and 的. We'll get to that in a second. Then the next one was talking about my work is writing.
我的工作是写书。
So the first part we have 我的工作, which is my work, and then 是. Okay, and then he said as well his occupation, and he said
我是作家。
So you may have noticed that all these phrases revolve around the word 是, which means to be. So you may know this or should know this from your first lessons or something when you say, I am, like my name or something. How would you say that?
我是庆林。
Or you could say like, I'm a German. 我是德国人。
我是中国人。
So that's very easy to use. It's just like I or whoever as a subject, 是, and then something. Okay, but we have in the first answer of the person, like what is he doing? He says this 是 something something 的. What was it again?
我是做生意的。
So you heard the 的 in the end, but there is a word for business person as such. What is it called?
生意人。
So couldn't I just say like I am a business person?
可以啊，我是生意人。
So what is the actual difference between these two? Like when would you use 是 plus 的 and when would I just use 是?
I have a story. Before my son went to school, the teacher asked me if your son can go to toilet by himself or not.
Oh.
My answer was no. And the teacher told me, sorry, your son cannot come to school.
Oh, that's rude. But why?
Because she said, 我是做老师的，不是做保姆的。
Okay, so the teacher said, because I'm a teacher and not a nanny. Okay, so you can maybe from that example or from that experience see where there is like the tiny difference between saying I am a teacher, which would be
我是老师，
and like I am doing the profession of a teacher.
我是做老师的。
So the difference between these two, like the one is only 是 and the other one is 是 something something 的, is an emphasis. So using this 是 and 的 construction, you want to emphasize something in specific. And it normally is like 是, then a verb, then what you are doing, and then the 的 in the end. So 我是做老师的。
我是做老师的。
I'm doing the work of a teacher. So we use this 是 the structure to emphasize things. But because we have to use it together with a verb and some other words inside, the whole structure more resembles a clause in English. So it actually is more like this saying, I am the one who does something, something, something. So you could add many things to it. And you could talk about, for example, the certain field you are working in, instead of merely talking about your profession as a working title. The other person then simply uses the 是 structure to answer. So he says, my work is,
我的工作是，
and I am.
我是。
So there's no special emphasis here. It's just like, my work is, and I am. And of course, if you say my work is something, then you can speak a little bit more about the content of it. So here he says writing.
写书。我的工作是写书。
But when you say I am, then of course you should possibly take your occupational title. And he says, I'm a writer.
我是作家。
So maybe let's do a little bit of activity to like practice all these different ways of saying, like, what am I doing? In what kind of field am I working? And what my occupation is.
好啊。我是做音乐的。
So you're doing music. Are you a rock star?
No, no.
Then a musician.
对，我是音乐家。我是教中文的。
Oh, that's easy. If you're teaching Chinese, then of course you're a Chinese teacher.
我是中文老师。我的工作是做菜。
So your work is cooking. Then you're probably a chef in a restaurant.
没错，我是厨师。
So those are some different ways of talking about your occupation. Let's check them out in a dialogue again.
您是做什么的？
我是做生意的，你呢？
我的工作是写书，我是作家。 您是做什么的？
我是做生意的，你呢？
我的工作是写书，我是作家。您是做什么的？
我是做生意的，你呢？
我的工作是写书，我是作家。
Joe，你是做什么的？
I'm a business owner.
哦，老板。老板的工作是什么？
我是什么都做的。
You do everything?
Yes, because I'm the only one in my business. So what about you guys?
你们是做什么的？
Feel free to share with us what you work as, what your occupation is, and use the expressions you've learned today. If you need any help or vocabulary, because there are so many professions out there and you may not know how to say them, just leave us a comment as well and we'll get back to you. This was Joe.
我是庆林，下次见，
Bye
拜
bye.
拜。
Now, here's a vocabulary recap.
生意、
Business,
工作、
work,
写书、
to write,
作家。
writer.
Introducing Chinese Pod Recap, the app with fast summary lessons. How much time do you have? Join us in the beta program. For more info, go to ChinesePod.com/recap.